You know, when we think about boosting performance, our first instinct is usually to just slam on the gas pedal, right? Give it more power. But what if that's not the problem at all? What if the real issue is a brake that's stuck on? Today we're diving into Si14 Erectum and a totally different way of thinking about this challenge.
So, the key to this whole different approach is written right here, the neuroadrenergic pathway. Yeah, it sounds pretty technical, I know, but all it really describes is the body's internal braking system. Let's break down exactly how that works.
And this really gets us to the heart of the matter. See, while most solutions are all about giving the engine more gas, this one starts by asking a fundamentally different question. What if the engine is perfectly fine? What if the real problem is that the brakes are just pressed down way too hard?
Okay, so if we're going to talk about releasing a brake, we first have to figure out what is this brake. Turns out, our body has this built-in off switch that's designed to control this whole process.
And here's the key player right here, alpha-2 adrenoreceptors. Just think of these as the body's natural brakes. They're like these little sensors, and when they get activated, they basically tell the nervous system, all right, that's enough. And they slow down the release of noradrenaline, which is a really key chemical for alertness and, well, response.
So you can imagine what happens when these alpha-2 brakes get pressed. The whole system just kind of downshifts. The body's main go signal gets weaker, nerve signals to your blood vessels get turned down, and the vessels themselves just become less reactive. And the end result of all that? A weaker response. See, for some people, the main issue is that these brakes can just be a little too active.
So if the problem is a brake that's a little too enthusiastic, the solution is, well, it's pretty logical, isn't it? You've got to find a way to release it. And that leads us right to the main mechanism of the key ingredient we're talking about, yohimbine.
This whole thing is like a domino effect, a 5-stage cascade. First up, at the receptor level, yohimbine literally blocks those alpha-2 receptors. It takes the foot off the brake. That leads to step 2, the neuronal level, where noradrenaline release goes up, making the signal stronger. Then, that stronger signal hits the vascular level, improving blood flow. From there, sensory response is heightened, which finally leads to the behavioral level, an enhanced response. It's this whole chain reaction that starts with one simple action, releasing the brake.
Now, this whole release the brake mechanism, this is where we get to a really crucial distinction, especially when you compare it to things people are more familiar with, like sildenafil. As it turns out, they don't even work on the same part of the process, not at all.
And you can see the big differences right here, side by side. Yohimbine is all about modulating the central nervous system and the vessels. Meanwhile, sildenafil works by blocking a specific enzyme, mostly out in the peripheral vessels. This difference also explains why yohimbine can sometimes have a stimulating effect on your whole system, something you almost never see with PDE5 inhibitors. It's also really important to point out that neither of them has any direct impact on your hormones.
Okay, if you only remember one thing from this comparison, let it be this. This is the single most important takeaway. Yohimbine helps get the response started. It enhances the initiation by releasing the body's natural brakes. On the other hand, PDE5 inhibitors are all about keeping the response going once it's already started. They enhance maintenance. See, two totally different phases of the same event.
So this difference in how they work means we're not talking about a one-size-fits-all solution here, which leads to the obvious question: who is this neuroadrenergic approach actually for?
This approach really shines in cases where the issue is more functional or even psychological. We're talking about things like performance anxiety, stress-related difficulties, basically situations where the underlying physical machinery is in good shape, but the signals are getting suppressed for some reason. But on the flip side, we have to be realistic about where it's not going to be very effective. If there's a serious underlying physical problem, like severe damage to the blood vessels, nerve damage from diabetes or surgery, or a major hormonal issue like very low testosterone, then just releasing the neural brake isn't going to be enough to solve the root cause. So for the people who are a good fit, what does the experience actually look like? Well, generally, you can expect things to start happening within about 30 to 60 minutes. The peak effect usually hits somewhere between 1 and 2 hours in, and the primary duration, that lasts for a few hours, though of course that can vary a bit from person to person.
All right, this is super important. Anytime you're talking about a mechanism that messes with the nervous system, that stimulates it, we absolutely have to talk about safety and how to be smart about it. The mantra here is start low and go slow. That's the key. A first trial dose is often just 2.5 milligrams.
just to see how your body tolerates it. If that goes well, the common working range is somewhere between 5 and 10 milligrams. But pushing beyond that, that's where you get into the caution zone, and your risk of side effects goes up pretty significantly, often without much extra benefit.
And what are those side effects? Well, they're not random. They're actually the logical result of the mechanism itself, because you're releasing the brake on the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight system. You can get things like a faster heart rate, a bump in blood pressure, or feelings of anxiety and nervous energy. And this is exactly why you have to be careful, especially if you have any pre-existing conditions like hypertension.
So as we wrap this up, let's just circle back to this core idea. The philosophy behind this whole approach isn't about forcing the body to do something with a powerful chemical. It's not about that at all. Instead, the goal is much more subtle. It's about removing a layer of inhibition, releasing those natural brakes, and just allowing the body's own systems to do what they're supposed to do. It's a fundamentally different and really interesting way of looking at the whole problem.